Councillor Walpole-Hodge.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. During her speech at the Tory conference, the Prime Minister revealed that she plans to trigger Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty, the legal mechanism for leaving the EU, when it ends from March. Her timescale will mean that the UK will have left the European bloc no later than April 2019. How does the Cabinet Member for Planning intend to ensure that this Council responds to the Government's pledge to reject a soft Brexit and control migration from the EU to the UK in the Council's evidence base for the 20-year local plan to 2034?
Thank you. Councillor Moore.
Mr Mayor, I thank the councillor for this question. On the same day this question was submitted, we had what became known as Marmite Gate, where Unilever tried to increase the price of Marmite to Tesco due to Brexit. Interestingly, Marmite is wholly made in the UK, burden on trade in fact. Tesco robustly dealt with this challenge and Unilever were forced to climb down. It was clear that this was a case of a large multinational company jumping the gun over Brexit. Mr Mayor, I think this question too may be jumping the gun. When the government actually publishes something regarding planning legislation and guidance as a result of Brexit, then our professional officers will advise us on the steps the local planning authority needs to take. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Councillor Walpole-Hodge, you have a supplementary?
Yes, I do, Mr Mayor. 68.6% of Basildon Borough residents voted out on the 23rd of June. Similarly, Basildon residents that took part in this authority's consultation during January to March 2016 on the draft local plan knew exactly why they opposed it. 80% of residents opposed the quantum of development. 86% were dissatisfied with the plan to meet needs for homes while protecting our green spaces. 82% also expressed concern about both proposals for community and transport infrastructure. I am aware that the Cabinet Member, like me, attended the duty...
It's a question, it should be. You're making a speech.
No, I need to put it into context because both the Cabinet Member and myself attended the inspector's meeting. Thank you. I am aware that the Cabinet Member, like me, attended the duty to cooperate hearing at Castle Point Borough Council on Monday morning. On face value, the outcome of that hearing, basically, Castle Point managed to fend off attacks from representatives of the 4 other local authorities with deft ease. On face value, the National Planning Policy Framework is open to interpretation, much like our Constitution. Can the Cabinet Member please tell us why this administration continues to ignore the mandate given by Basildon Borough residents with regards to the quantum of development proposed for the borough and their desired need for homes while protecting green earth? Thank you.
Councillor Moore.
It seems like we'll try and bring everything into this question. I'd like to point out, as the councillor knows, that the planning inspector did not make a decision at Castle Point on Monday. That decision has been reserved to January, so we do not have a conclusion from them on which to base an argument on protecting Greenbelt because Castle Point do.
Councillor Walpole-Hodge, you have a second supplementary question.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I am aware of the outcomes of the Castle Point hearing, and there were indeed a number of myths that were dispelled. For example, Castle Point are the first to submit their local plan, Basildon are second, and Thurrock isn't submitting its plan until 2020. There is a duty to cooperate, but there is no duty to agree. The question is, will the Cabinet member, having attended the Castle Point Inspector's meeting held in public, consider delaying our local plan until such time as we have a better understanding about the emerging local plans of each of the 5 local authorities within the single housing market, so that we know what chunks of infrastructure are possible? It's no good having 3/5 of it being built. And is it not time for this administration to give the green light to officers to allow member involvement?
I think there were 2 questions there, and I'm not sure which one Councillor Ward's going to answer.
I'll answer them all, Mr. Mayor. Is it that funny? With local planning authority partners in South Essex, an update to the South Essex Strategic Housing Market Assessment, the SHMAR, published in May 2016, has already been commissioned and is currently underway. This incorporates an additional requirement for the SHMAR to consider the implications of the decision to leave the EU. This is due to be completed in early 2017 and will inform local plan making across South Essex. Interestingly, she said that Thurrock planned to submit their plan in 2020. Thurrock already have a local plan. It was approved in 2011. So that's a little bit of a side issue. In addition, an up-to-date South Essex Economic Development Needs Assessment has also been commissioned to consider, amongst other things, likely jobs growth, which will be incorporated into the SHMAR. This will enable the Council to draw from these up-to-date assessments, which will consider national context and economic changes before the local plan is finalised. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Moore. Question number 2 from Councillor Gary Cannon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There is no doubt that the volume of EU directives and rules is vast, and they all have legal force in the UK until the Brexit negotiations are complete. The government has announced that after the
The question I want you to read out says,
Is it on?
can the Cabinet member...
No, yours is on.
Yeah, I was just leading up to it, so I can go straight to the question.
All I need to do is read the question out.
Okay, can the Cabinet member tell us what has been the cost to Basildon's taxpayers of complying with the EU Procurement Directive for the last 3 consecutive financial years, including staffing costs, on costs and advertising costs in the official journal of the European Community?
Thank you. Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Councillor Cannon was referring to the official journal of the European Union. The Council has a small procurement team that assists the Council with sourcing contracts for goods, works and services at value thresholds that are above and below the threshold set in the EU Procurement Directive. The actual costs of complying with a portion of activities that are subject to the EU Procurement Directive cannot be separated from overall costs, because the EU Procurement Directive does not bring any additional costs to the Council. There are no costs to the Council associated with advertising in the official journal of the European Union. OJU does not charge a fee to the Council for advertisements, and the Council's e-tendering software automatically publishes the advertisements in OJU if the appropriate box is checked on the notice pro forma. In order to demonstrate full market testing and value for money, the Council's own contract procedure rules require advertisement of opportunities above certain values, and so this is work that will be undertaken in any event. No staff have been employed solely to undertake EU procurement, although staff are trained and updated regarding legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Cannon, supplementary.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Once any restrictions are lifted upon leaving the EU, will the Cabinet commit to awarding large contracts to local companies where possible to enhance Basildon and Essex economy?
Point of order, please. It's 11K Roman numerals 1, where there's any supplementary question must be directly after the original question or reply, and the original question related to the EU procurement directive. Those costs directly arising from that process, also in relation to the costs arising out of advertising on the OCEC, and not in relation to the question just asked.
Just 1 second.
Just for a point of clarification, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Just a moment, please, Councillor Cates.
Yes.
You've got to sit down for a moment.
Yes.
I'll allow the question.
Could I?
I've dealt with that point of
Well,
order. So if you'd like to sit down and Councillor Cannon has asked the question and Councillor Sullivan will answer the question.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to say that you
Have
said
you another
that.
point of order?
Sorry?
Have you another point
Yes,
of
I
order?
do. It's 11k Roman
No, you
numeral
gave
one.
that one once.
No, Mr. Mayor, you said no. I'd like a reason why you're ruling my question and my point ruled out of order. I need to know.
I think it's close enough to the original question to allow the question.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Sullivan.
I've almost forgotten the question.
Councillor Dad's will rewind.
I would like to assure Councillor Cannon and all councillors that, of course, this council will award contracts to the most appropriate firm that is tendering for them, that gives the best value for money for the taxpayers of this borough. That's something we do now and will continue to do.
Have you done a supplementary?
That's it, thank you.
No.
Question number
3, Councillor Fellows, Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, ma'am. The Prime Minister recently confirmed that new selective schools will be allowed to open and that existing schools will be able to become grammar. What action, if any, has the Cabinet member taken to further Basildon Council's recently adopted programme of policy with the LEA and education providers across the borough?
Councillor Sullivan.
The Department for Education has recently undertaken a consultation which ended a few days ago on the 12th of December regarding proposed changes in connection with a number of aspects of school arrangements titled Schools That Work for Everyone. This covers a number of issues including the well-publicised proposals by the new Prime Minister that Councillor Fellows refers to of the government's plans to enable additional selective grammar schools, which legislation currently prohibits. Following consultation, the legislation enabling the establishment of new selective schools need to be brought forward for parliamentary approval to give effect to the proposal. Until then, I trust full council agrees that it would be premature to progress the matter.
Thank you, Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Fellows, supplementary.
Yes, ma'am. It was reported in the Yellow Advertiser that the leader of the council has held secret meetings with one of Britain's most successful grammar schools regarding a possible new 1,000+ pupil campus in Basildon. Councillor Turner went on to say the head teacher has taken the idea back to the school's Board of Governors, and I've asked the council's chief executive to start looking at ways that we can find the funding. Would the cabinet member confirm if in fact the chief executive has actually initiated those discussions, and when will we hear of any progress, please?
It's a secret.
Thank you. Councillor Sargent will respond.
Mr Mayor, I am unable to confirm what Councillor Fellows is asking. Not able to confirm.
Do you have another supplementary, Councillor Fellows?
I do, Mayor, thank you.
Have a drink first.
Given that for many years, as I can remember, vast numbers of children from West Basildon have commuted daily across the A127, placing great stress on those children, and not to forget the impacts on the family budgets to secondary schools north of the A127. and that those same areas will be under great pressure to provide secondary school places in readiness for the new housing developments in the local plan. Will the Cabinet member confirm if any land in West Basildon has been considered to be brought forward as a possibility for the location of the new school, which will of course allow the children from West Basildon to attend, thereby freeing up many spaces at secondary schools north of the A127, reducing the impact on those secondary schools and making the provision of new schools in those areas less necessary.
Thank you, Councillor Sargent. Sorry? Councillor Sargent to respond, yeah.
This really is parental choice. I mean, I live north of the 127 and I still send my children at my cost to Billericay School. So really, and I know they didn't have a car to go, but believe me, there were less bus services then, and so we had to pay private bus services to do it. With regard to the planning question, I think I can't really answer that because I think that will be recognised within the local plan anyway. But one thing I want to assure Councillor Fellows is that we fully support this, and you know, we're not going to, we've got to wait for the information to come through, and we're very supportive of it.
Thank you, Councillor Sargent. Question number 4 from Councillor Ferguson to Councillor Sargent.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can the Cabinet member assure members that the views and responses of the residents throughout the borough to the consultation exercise on refuse collection arrangements will be duly considered and their implications taken into account in deciding on whether to implement the proposals set out in the consultation document?
Councillor Sargent.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. One thing I would like to point out is that the views of the people were many. They were not all the same. Not everybody was against what everybody else was. Some people agreed, some people didn't. So this is a big ask for me to stand here and say, well, yes, of course, we will take into consideration all of those views. But some of those views were for it, some were against what we are trying to do. So it's very difficult to stand here because I don't want to lie to anybody. But we will do as best as we can for any decision that's made that we can say, yes, we will take into consideration all of those views, which is why we won't be doing anything in January, simply because we need to properly analyse what was put in front of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ferguson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This has already been raised by a member of the public. I'd like to say that I raised my concerns about the consultation questions at scrutiny. I highlighted that in some cases questions looked devised to produce a certain result or were confusing and contradictory. The questionnaire suggests that moving to a fortnightly collection will reduce waste and increase recycling. I can well see how this, together with charging for garden waste disposal, may increase the incidence of fly tipping, but I fail to see how a change of frequency can reduce the overall amount of waste. Are people, for example, going to eat less on that account?
Is that a question, Councillor Ferguson?
I'm coming to that. Recycling rates are governed by the public perception of the benefits therefrom, an attitude to civic pride, which the lack of maintenance on many of our estates does nothing to encourage. Money may be saved by using the reduced workforce, but can the Cabinet member...
Please, you're making a speech, you're not asking a question. You must ask a question, please.
The question,
there was one question in there.
The question is, can the Cabinet member explain how these changes are going to reduce the amount of waste and increase recycling rates?
Councillor Sargent.
At the moment, Mr. Mayor, I can't explain anything because we don't even know what we're doing. We haven't There's been no agreements whatsoever whatsoever. But the method of all of this is that if you are going to reduce black sack waste, it's because you're putting what you used to put in your black sack waste into the recycling, which is what is not being done at the moment. And most of the questions that the councillor asked were answered at scrutiny, and I'm sure there'll be a minute for it.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Members can hardly be expected to accept that the consultation responses will be given proper consideration when the Cabinet member has so shamefully refused to take the slightest notice of the massive objections by the residents of Five Links to her plans to completely change their addresses.
Councillor Ferguson, yes, Councillor Ferguson, you don't need a point of order, Councillor Dance. Councillor Ferguson, that is not related to the original question. The question is purely about waste disposal. You're introducing another matter, it's out of order. So, if you'd like to, the second supplementary must relate to this main subject of the first question, which you've got on the order paper.
It relates, Mr. Mayor, to the question of whether...
No, the question is not you're asking. The question on the order paper is not on the capability of the Councillor Sergeant in any way or in any form. It's about waste disposal.
It's about whether...
Mr. Mayor, point of order, 11K1 says that the question has to be supplementary to the original question. Maybe the council needs to look at the Constitution and remind themselves what a supplementary question is.
Thank you, Councillor Dance. I've just indicated that it wasn't. So, question relating to the original question, please.
Yes. Well, the original question was as to whether the results of the consultation will be taken into account. And I'm just pointing out that has not been done in other situations, and it's this particular Cabinet member who's responsible for that. Anyway, I'll say this: will the Cabinet member assure members that if the general reaction of the majority of residents to the changes is negative, she will re-evaluate the scheme in the light of such rejection with a view to providing the sort of service residents require rather than what she thinks is good for them.
As we don't know the outcome of the consultation at the moment, Mr. Mayor, we will most definitely take into account, as I said, all of those responses.
Thank you.
Question number 5.
Councillor Kerry Smith to Councillor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When the Glenmere Community Centre is to close, will the site be used to build council houses on for local people, or will it be sold to the highest bidder?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The Glenmere site has been identified as a site suitable for residential development by the council through Centra Homes. There is therefore no intention to dispose of this site. Work is currently underway to define the development capacity of the site and the tenure of the homes when built. A planning application will be submitted as soon as possible once this work is completed. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Smith.
If I may just quickly thank the Cabinet member for its continuation and support for the council homes. I might run the risk of Councillor Dad's wrath, but I would only ask one supplementary question on this question. The users of the centre at the moment are a local boxing club, and they've been identified as Valerie Lodge. And one of the users said to me they've been asked to pay £18,000 a year rent for a small boxing club that uses the Glenmere Centre at the moment. Is this figure right, and can we not find them a cheaper venue, please?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be consistent with my approach and raise a point of order. I think it's only fair. Raise a point of order, and the point of order number again is K 11K.
Councillor Dance, can I say for the time that I do agree, and Councillor Smith, you should have learned from what happened previously. Although you're quite quick on the uptake normally, you should have taken into account the way we've had to deal with the others. So I'm sure you could rephrase that in a way which Councillor Sullivan might...
Can I go to the next question then, please?
You go on to the next question. This is the second supplementary or another question?
I'll go straight to number 6 and I'll do mine via email.
Right. Question number 6. Thank you very much.
Over the public bank holidays that make up the Christmas holiday period, the 26th and the 27th of December and the 2nd of January, will any council-owned rooms, halls or buildings be hired out, and to whom?
Councillor Sullivan.
Yes,
Can you turn your microphone on, please? Thank you.
yes, our directly managed community centres will be used during the public and Christmas holidays by regular hirers on the 25th, the 26th and the 27th of December and the 1st and 2nd of January. Those hirers include churches, a karate club and a slimming club. As regular hirers, they can access the buildings themselves with a member of our team and call if there are any problems.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you. Will one of those venues be the Basildon Centre? And if that's the case, will we be having to double our staff, and will we make any money as a council or lose money with that hire?
Councillor Sargent.
When I responded, Mr Mayor, I said our directly managed community centres, this building will not be used during that time.
Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is what happens when you ask us a direct question. And with the other venue hires, will the council be left out of pocket?
Councillor Sargent.
No, Mr Mayor, the council will not be left out of pocket. The charges for the halls are published as part of the council's scales of fees and charges, and we would anticipate an income of around £600